Welcome to Business Aspirin, pain relief for business. Clint has managed a restoration company in Dallas since 2008 and is one of the top drying experts in his region. Clint is also the co-founder of JobDocs, a software developed to help his team manage their overwhelming volume of projects. On the podcast, Clint brings together business managers and leaders to share with you how they have overcome their business pains and how you can too. And now, here's your host, Clint Junell.
Hey everybody, welcome to Business Aspirin. I'm your host, Clint Junell, and today I have with me my good friend Tyler Otto from Restoration Solutions in DFW. Tyler, how the heck are you, man?
Good, Clint. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. It's really good to have you on, dude. It's exciting to be able to have people that I know that are competitors, but also friends that we've done stuff together and we chat regularly, and somebody that I know about you. And So to get to have you on and then just kind of pick your brain a little bit about this Business Aspirin stuff is intriguing and fun for me, man. So thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you inviting and having on. And I like to have, I don't have any competitors, right? We just have other people that do the same stuff. I think we work at least on one job together, if not more than one.
I think we've had at least a couple that we've worked together. So, and then, man, I know I can lean on you for stuff, and you can lean on me for stuff, and that's pretty great to have those relationships. So excited to have you on in this environment. And so let's talk a little bit about Tyler. Let's talk about you and how you got into the restoration space and entrepreneurial spirit and all those kind of things that are about you that led you to where you are today.
Yeah. So I got into the restoration space almost 10 years ago now. It'll be my 10-year anniversary in January. The company itself existed 5 years before that. So I landed in this space on accident. I had a sales career mostly leading up to this. So I spent about 10 years in the medical device business. I spent a year building houses in Austin before that. And so because I'd been pretty successful in that business and kind of got into some positions younger than the average person would, I was able to do well, make some money, but the entrepreneurial spirit got me. And also we share some other stuff in common. My big old A trait from Culture Index got me. And I said, no one can do this better than me. And I kept getting promoted or passed up for promotions, right? So I was 25, 26 years old, saying I should be the regional manager. And they would say, no, man, you're too young. And so I kind of got tired of that and said, I want to go into business for myself. And so I started looking for different businesses, didn't really have a passion on what I wanted to do. And actually, while we were on family vacation in Austin, I found this site called Biz Buy Sell. And it's just people at that time, and I'm sure it still exists, listed their businesses for sale. And so I saw this company, Restoration Solutions. I look it up. I'm like, oh, they do some carpet cleaning and they work for home builders. Well, I had worked for a home builder and I knew how to clean carpet. So I said, hey, this is probably what I should do, right? This is tailor-made for me. And so talked to the owners and bought it, signed my life away to Wells Fargo at the time, and moved my family from Houston back up to the DFW Metroplex, where I grew up and had family, and kind of took it from there. When I took over, mostly carpet cleaning and a little bit of mitigation. And so after I kind of got my feet under me to kind of figure out what's going on, I said, man, we make a lot of money when we extract water out of a building compared to when we spray it on top of the carpet to clean. And so I focused on, really trying to grow that mitigation business. We still do carpet cleaning. It's a good, I still think it's a good business to be in. And it kind of is a kind of a, I hate to call it a loss leader because it's profitable. It's not as profitable as the other, but we're able to use that to break into some commercial accounts that otherwise we wouldn't be able to differentiate ourselves.
But it's definitely a good lead source for you, man. Yeah. That avenue of business for you is spectacular. What is your wheelhouse on that? So if somebody is looking to get into the restoration space and they do a little bit of carpet cleaning, maybe they're kind of on the first step of what you were doing. Where's your wheelhouse? Where do you go get most of that business? And where would you suggest that somebody go focus to kind of develop that part of the business, to jump in it?
So I would say focus on where you already are. So for us, we didn't do any residential work, and we still don't do a ton of residential work as far as individual homeowners. So we were big into the multifamily space and home builder space. And so that's where we kind of watered our mitigation seeds. And so I think it just comes down to asking or making your customers aware of like, hey, I'm adding on, this service. And it's somewhere where we already understand how they do business and what makes them happy. Switching into a different customer segment, such as, for us would have been into like pure residential, I think introduces a lot of variables, and you're trying to learn two things at once, right? A new business type, right? A new business service and a new customer base. And so I would say it doesn't really matter what customer base you're serving at the time when you want to do it. I would say stay focused on where you're already making money and then try to expand your service offerings there. Once you get really good at that, then, hey, now can I take this to commercial? Can I take this to healthcare? Could I take this to schools? Things like that. But I would say if you want to go from a carpet cleaning company into the mitigation and restoration world, I would say start with who you're already serving and who's already happy with you, because you're going to stub your toe, right? And so do you want to stub your toe with a totally new customer base that in no relationships? I would say, probably not,
right.
Learn kind of on your existing customer base, which, don't burn bridges, right? But I mean, it's like, hey, Clint, like, we've been working together. We have this new service, can we talk about, you give us a shot expanding this. I've set the stage to where, me. So if there's a problem or something, you're going to be able to call me and say, hey, Tyler, we got this issue, or hey, I wasn't happy with this. And you could do that with a homeowner that you'd have on regular carpet cleaning schedule on as well, if you're talking about the residential side.
Sure. And I love that, right? Because then you go, okay, well, this is about relationships. Yeah. So your client base that you have a relationship with, they know you, they trust you, they know you do good work on the carpet cleaning side or whatever service you currently provide for them, even if it's not carpet cleaning or restoration, whatever it is you do. They can trust that you're going to take care of what you say you're going to take care of, and you're going to do that and do that well. So as a result, you get to go, okay, hey, Mr. Smith, I'm venturing off into some other stuff because we noticed that in the carpet cleaning space, a lot of those guys, the first person they want to call is the carpet cleaner when they have extraction that needs to have like something flooded. And we've learned and gotten certified and know how to actually dry these structures well now. And we would love that opportunity to be able to provide that service for you. And then that opens up that new vertical for you.
Right.
Yeah. And so you've had a lot of success with that. You've done well in terms of capturing a new vertical from a market you already had operations in.
Right.
What do you think was what was the biggest factor? What was the most important thing as you navigated the new vertical? What did you need to do and focus on most?
Good question. So we needed to, I think the first thing is train, right? Like we've got to say, okay, if we're going to start, expanding our service base, how do we get really good at this, right? How do we get better? And then with that though, I think it's just, you got to be willing to take some risk on, right? Some new be willing to look at this new problem or new challenge and say, hey, like I can do this. I'm trained. I have my people here, but you can't be scared to jump in and start kind of making it happen, right? I don't know if I'm answering this question great, but it's like, hey, I mean, at some point you've got to commit to doing this, right? You've got to say, I'm going to be, in the mitigation space now, but learn how to do it. And then you just have to go out and execute. There's no better way to learn, I think, than by doing. And so we went out, we started marketing it to more customers, taking on the work, learning as we go, not getting too far out over our skis, right? But taking on, some of that, risk or just learning new ways to process jobs and to serve the customer base.
Yeah. And I think that's a spectacular way to do it. And so Tyler alluded to something earlier, guys, that he and I have gone through the same trait profiling program. And so we know that we are essentially wired identically. We have the same trait profiling, which means we're ultra competitive. We want to win. We think we're better and smarter than everyone else. We have a tendency to not care what you think about us personally, but we do care what you think about our companies because we want to win. And then very detail oriented. So Tyler's a numbers guy. So you can anticipate when he's trying to jump into a new space, he wants to do that very well. He's competitive. So he wants to make sure that everybody perceives him in the competition side as being excellent and doing it well because he wants to compete. And then he cares about the details of doing it right. So I can just envision you trying to jump into these new spaces, and you're very much a process guy, and you want to make sure you have all this stuff lined up in order to do that. So what was the stress beside or behind going, okay, look, I'm going to do this. How do I ensure that I do it well? Like what went into that? And then conversely, how long did it take you to go, okay, we're going to go ahead and do
it? Well, okay. At the point we were with the company, I knew I needed to grow it, right? I had people in the business and in the company already that knew what they were doing. And I joked, like, I cleaned carpet. Like, I cleaned carpet, like 3 of us used one truck and tried to figure out who was going to be able to go serve the customer space, right? So I didn't really know what I was doing. I was able to lean on people in the company who already knew a little about what they're doing, and then just go immerse myself in that business. So it went from, I got on a truck and went out and cleaned. I got on a truck and went out and did mitigations. I went to, when we had our first big job, which I can remember. So we would get super excited. I was like, we'd have someone call in, a customer member. We'd like a $500 or $600 job. And I was like, holy cow, life is never going to be better than it is right now. And then I remember, like, we got to our first $1,000 job and I said, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. And man, I was just there and present and made sure that we got it done, like, no matter what it takes. And I think that there's probably a better way to do it. I probably, burned some years off of my life by, chasing all the jobs and everything around. But, I don't know that you'll learn as fast without, getting in there and doing it and making sure, like, hey, Clint, if you were one of my technicians and I'm out looking at, all these jobs, I'm going to roll up and I'm going to say, hey, man, thank you. I can tell you worked hard on this job. Can we walk through and understand why you set this up the way you did? Is there a better way to do this? Really just asking questions, why people are doing things. On the backside, knowing the right way to do it or the efficiencies to do it, I think it relieves some of that stress and just being out there and seeing it. And there's also tons of great resources out there, whether it's as simple as YouTube or joining some industry associations, right? So we got involved with several different industry associations. One, we got certified through the IICRC, is that they don't show you how to do the job, but they teach you the science behind it, right? So you can go in there and say, okay, I can go to someone who's been doing this for 20 years and say, now I know why you're doing what you're doing, right? And I can talk intelligently about it. And then I can train someone and say, hey, the reason why we put an air mover here or like this isn't just because, right? It's in order to facilitate the most efficient way to dry. And it's calculated, right? Because I think where our industry can get a bad, name or bad rap sometimes is the barriers to entry can be low. And so people can go out there and just slam equipment into jobs or not put enough equipment on a job. There's kind of still can be a little bit of the Wild West. And so just educating yourself and being there and making sure you're not one of those guys or running jobs like that, I think is important. So I guess just showing up,
I agree. Right. Like, so I think if you look at the perspective of really in any industry, you can just go do work and not do it well and do enough on a customer, like in the water space, right? So restoration, the majority of the clients you deal with have never had an issue.
Yep.
So if they've never had an issue, they don't know what to expect. So you come in and you show up and you have 30 fans that go into a property that really only needs 10. They don't know the difference. And so I appreciate what you're saying in terms of let's get educated, potentially get certified, and utilize that education to provide a better service and make that one of our processes, which is provide exceptional service to our clients with some formal backing of an understanding of what it takes to actually do our job and do it well. And so I can appreciate that perspective because it is the Wild West at some level, really kind of in any industry. Sure. In terms of trying to make things happen and just trying to go at it. And when you're young and when you're starting off your business, you're trying to make everything happen, whatever you can make it. Whatever job you can make into a job, you want to make it into a job, and you want to make as much money as you can on it because you're not sure when the next one's going to come there. Like you're talking about $500,000 jobs. You're like, oh, this is awesome, right? How do we get more of these? How do we make more on these environments? And I think I can appreciate having the education for you and your staff to make sure that they do the job at least as well as they possibly can, right? Like I think in our space, nothing ever really goes perfectly. I would still contend that the science behind drying isn't perfect. I know there's some people that would argue that, because those guys that are, doing the schools and saying this is what you have to do and how you do this thing and you need to dry like this is they're going to contend that their science is spot on, but it's not, regardless of who you talk to in that environment. So getting educated and doing that well is significant and important. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what is something you wish you knew when you got started that maybe you know now.
So I think that the value of numbers is something that, and it's something that I think I'm pretty good at and I've always been good at, but knowing the importance of collecting your own data and then how to, sort, track, and utilize that to your advantage, I think is something that you can't start soon enough. I'm pretty good, and I still rely on this up here as opposed to getting everything down onto paper or into a system. And I just think that, man, if you have the opportunity when you're starting out to just start recording as much and collecting as much data in the same way or the same format on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, you will be so far ahead of the game when it comes to growing, scaling your company profitably and knowing what works and what doesn't work. So all the stuff you talked about earlier about me, about, how I'm wired, about wanting to do things well, wanting to be accurate, wanting to have the system and process in place. I wasn't always the best at getting that on paper. I'm still not the best at getting that on paper. And that has hurt us. It hurts us now sometimes. And it definitely hurt us in the past of like, hey, where am I getting my business from? How long, when I go there to this particular job, how long does it take me to do it versus this other job, right? Why did it take me longer here or longer there? How many sales calls did we have to make in order to get this new customer? What was our gross margin last year on water jobs versus cleaning jobs? I mean, all that stuff. It's so easy to set that up on the front end and take the time to do it. But you don't get paid for collecting data and organizing data. And so I needed to go out and make money, right? And so that's what I did. I think if you can be disciplined enough on the front end to get your numbers in order, in place, track your data, stay organized, track your processes, get them on paper. I think that's the biggest thing to do it. And there's so many tools out there that'll do a lot of this for you. There's industry softwares that will do a lot of this stuff for you, right? You might know of at least one.
I think I know one of them.
but I mean, there's multiple softwares and some they're all good at some stuff and they all focus on everything. But I think knowing, like deciding what you want to track and then getting that down and getting it tracked and tracking it consistently over time. You don't need a software on the front end to do it, but you do need to know what numbers to track. And then you can decide, right? There's probably, I bet if you and I we could probably name 15 numbers that
are important
a company could track, but
you need to know.
Yeah. But you can't track all 15 all the time, right? You've got to decide of those, what are my 3 to 5 numbers that I'm really going to focus on and drive? There's tons of resources out there that'll tell you how to collect it, which ones to collect, how to aggregate it, and then what they mean. And if you can spend time doing that on the front end, there's also tons of softwares that will very easily let you build a process, right? They'll track your computer strokes and all that.
Sure.
Investing a small amount in that stuff on the front end when you think you don't have time is, I think, it would have been a game changer for me if I could go back 10 years and start over again. And people told me, right, like someone's going to hear this. Hopefully, at least 10 people maybe will hear this and they'll say, "Man, I need to go do this," right? But they won't do it, right? They'll be like, "I don't have time," and you will never have time to go back. You're only going to get busy.
That's right. That's the story over and over and over and over again. And I had a conversation with Russ Palmer a few weeks ago in regard to this, and his podcast will post pretty quick, but it's the same thing. It's, well, when should you do this? And I appreciate you saying, do this now. Like the instant you're getting started, do it, because most of us waited too long. Right. I mean, that's the reason we created the whole JobDocs thing to begin with, is because we didn't have processes in place and stuff was slipping through the cracks, and we were doing work and failing to bill for it because we couldn't keep up with it. And we weren't tracking what we needed to be tracking. We didn't even have it really on paper per se when we started trying to do that, because it's difficult to do that because, again, I needed to work. I needed to earn money. I had a family to support, and now I have employees that I got to support, and oh my gosh, we got to get this stuff done. But truthfully, you're going to have more success and more time and more opportunity if you do that now.
Yep.
Put the processes in place and navigate it. And, there's tools for that. Like we talked on several of the conversations I've had, there's guys that are using EOS Entrepreneur operating system as one, scaling up as one that we've had conversations about. So utilizing some system to tell you how you put your team together and then what to track. Like these are the things that should be important to you. Focus on these things, right? You got to have sales. So, okay, well, how's my sales team doing? I've got to have some revenue. Well, then what percentage of these am I closing in order to have the sales team do something? Well, am I doing this work and not making any money doing the work? Like there's some things you can figure out. But if you don't track it, you can't change it. Yes. Like the only thing that ever gets changed is what gets monitored, right? Like if you don't know what you're doing, you're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I really appreciate that statement of what you're doing in regard to this podcast and how it's going to help somebody try to develop and grow in business. So let's talk about then from that perspective, like talk about a pain that you've had that was kind of hard to fix. That one would be an easy one to talk about, right? Like I didn't put stuff in place quick enough and that's a hard pain, but and you can talk about that more if you want, but is there anything else?
Yeah, I think that one of the other, really hard things to do, and I think everyone probably says this, every generation, but I mean, hiring is having a strategy around hiring is really important. So you and I both use the same company to do kind of employee screening, and there's lots of options out there to do that. But I think having a system and process in place to know the kind of person you want to hire, and then how are you going to find them? How often, and then how often are you going to look for them? I think has been painful, and I think that's certainly been something that will hold you back. Right, getting the right people in place, knowing when to hire. If you want to hire someone, it's just today's market. If you need a project manager right now, you should have started looking about 3 months ago. Training. Getting just the hiring process, I think, has just been one of the hardest parts for us, with it, just the recruiting, finding the right people, get them onboarded, get them into your system, getting them trained and getting them set up for success. I think has been one of the hardest things. I never would have thought it'd been so hard, because we always assume everyone's like us, right? So, I'm a kind of a take charge, go, like we said, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to learn how to do it. I'm going to learn how to be the best at it. Like, you're not going to have to tell me a whole lot about what I'm going to do once I get interested in something, right? Like, I'm going to learn it and try to master it. But not everyone's like that. And thank God. And no one's ever going to care as much as you as the business owner or the manager, right? And so you just have to remember that, and figuring out, you need people that are going to do the work. You need people that are into the technical side of the job from the labor standpoint, right? And so those people aren't going to be your salespeople, right? And you need your salespeople that are going to go out there and close jobs, and they're probably not going to be the technician that's going to, have the patience and the detail and whatnot to put everything together. So I think having a profile of who you want in what role, knowing how to find that person, and then once you get them on, knowing how to onboard them successfully into the company and successfully into the role is probably the hardest thing that you're going to do owning any business. And it's something that, we certainly, have struggled with in the past. It's not easy. I've probably hired people who should have been rock stars that I failed to either give enough time, enough training, enough attention to on the front end. And I've also probably hired some people, and then you'll do the same thing. You hire some people that aren't going to be a rock star for whatever reason, right? Just a bad fit. And you tend to let them, linger in your business too long, and that, creates problems as well. So I think having a just solid way around recruiting, finding who you want, getting them in the company, getting them trained, and getting them assimilated into the culture is the hardest thing you're going to do running a business.
Sure. Well, so let's talk about that a little bit. For those of you listening, one of the things he's talking about is trait profiling, and Culture Index is the company that Tyler works with, and there's others out there. So like Know Your Talents is one. And essentially what they're doing is you're answering a series of questions, and those series of questions help the survey understand how you're wired. And that's how Tyler and I know that we're wired the same, is because we've had that same test in the Culture Index. And it leads you to a place where you get to understand the trait profiling of your employees, and even to the point of being able to say, this trait profile is what I need for this role. Over and over again, this role has been successful with this trait profile, and you get to, kind of find somebody that trait profile. And I think that's spectacular, and I think it worked really well. But let's talk then. So in Tyler's case, before he even makes an offer to anyone, what we can do through Culture Index and Know Your Talent and some of these other guys is know if this person is a right culture fit for your environment and for that particular role you want to have them operate in. And so, which is spectacular. And it works really well. But then post-COVID, there's still something out there, Tyler, that I don't get, right? Like it's like you can even find the right person, right fit, but then it still blows up. And so like, let's talk about that, because prior to COVID and before 2020, you could use that and you could hire somebody and they were going to be there and it's going to be a rock star and things are going to be amazing for a pretty good period of time before you had to go look for somebody else. And now it seems like it just doesn't stick.
Yeah, we've definitely experienced that. I don't have a great answer.
Okay. And that's fine, right? It's, and that's fine because that's part of the process too, with people understanding like, look, we've put tools in place and there are tools that will help with this. And it's still difficult to get quality employees that are going to show up and they're going to do what they need to do on a regular basis in today's world. And
there's
tough.
So much knowledge work out there that has gotten pushed for so long, right? So when I say knowledge work, right, like you're people who are working behind a computer or an engineer or, programmers, whatever, right? Like stuff where you're paid for what you know, right? The trades haven't been pushed very hard for a long time. And so we're starting to see some of the reflection of that and the challenges of that, in this marketplace and in across the country, but especially in North Texas. I mean, the development of, physical property has been huge, right? So, I mean, if you wanted to, if you're inclined to work in a, trade or physical labor, the opportunities out there are endless. On the flip side, the knowledge workers, as technology has grown, and then you had COVID, they're not used. Their ability is out there to work from home, right? I don't think so. The lack of available labor, because there's so much opportunity out there, has been tough. And then the way some of the knowledge, based jobs have gone is just for a trade company, which is what we are, right? We might not be licensed technically, at least not in the state of Texas. We're a trade company. We need people here, and we, in our offices. When you're running a service-based company, I think it's very, very difficult to do that remotely. I'm sure there's people that are going to listen to this and roll their eyes and say, you just haven't figured it out yet. And I'm going to say, yeah, I haven't. But for me, I think there's some value to being here from an operations standpoint, from a collaboration standpoint. So the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. And quite honestly, I think that the numbers have shown that people are more productive when they're in a physical office space versus being at home. And I think there's a lot of people who need to have that human, interaction in the same space. As far as the labor side goes, like you got to figure out ways to keep those guys incentivized to work. You got to make sure that with this newer one, I mean, I think it's like there's a lot more it's not just about the paycheck. It's about the camaraderie of the team. It's about, making them feel appreciated. It's about, building again, kind of the buzzword of culture within your company. And some of the stuff is silly stuff, right? Some of it's that soft stuff that us, people in the trades or construction or whatever is like, we don't, it's not stuff that we think that we need to do, but really all of that, got a wide funnel going, I guess, but like all of that is important, in this day to get people in there and to get them to stay. One thing that we tried that worked pretty well, we're in the process of we stopped, we're going back, is that, man, I would encourage so the work from home thing, and I want to be careful here, but I'm assuming we're talking to other business owners here. This is a business owners podcast, right? So it's people that are looking to grow their business. There are ways to get people, if people aren't going to be in your office, get creative. So we're able to utilize, there's several services out there where you can start using people that live, because if people aren't going to come in your office, do you really care where they live at that point? And I would say, no, you don't, right? And so we've been able to utilize, workers in other parts of the world, Mexico being my favorite place to go, in order to accomplish administrative tasks and things that, if you're not going to be in the office, why do I care where you are at all? So they're on the same time zone in Mexico, and a lot of them speak great English because of, especially Texas with our customer base, having the English, Spanish, being bilingual is really important. So just get creative, man. I mean, if you can't get people to come in and everyone wants to be remote, then,
then pay somebody $8 an hour instead of 20 that they want here, right?
Yeah,
and get the 100%. Same result from something that's not going to be there. I get it. I have no problem with that. I mean, it's a reality of where we're at, and what the market and economy has done is like, well, suddenly you have to be paid an exorbitant amount of money to be able to provide anything. And you're right. Like if you're not going to be in the office, like you're right. It doesn't matter where you're at. If I can get the same result from somebody.
Now, as a red-blooded American and Texan, do I like outsourcing my jobs? No, I don't. Yeah. But I think, back to the, like, how do we do this post-COVID? I mean, you just have to get creative, right? Because we have an interesting business, right? And this maybe could take us another direction, but the market's only going to bear what it bears, right? So if everybody in my office, all of a sudden I need to start paying $25 and up to do every single task, right? I can't charge enough money to my customers to get them to continue to buy. Now, we are in a unique business where sometimes our customer isn't the end payer. And so some of that comes into place, right? But ultimately, I got to be able to market my service and sell it at a rate that is considered fair and reasonable, right, for our business. Right. I can't do that if I'm paying everybody $25, $30, $40 an hour, right? So we have to figure out ways to get creative, and that's, whether it's outsourcing payroll or outsourcing, some of your staff, to, across the world. That's one. Is there ways you can employ technology to get, one person to be able to now do the work of two? Anything like that, I think is helpful, post-COVID.
Well, because like at the end of the day, the consumer has to bear the burden of whatever it costs to make this happen.
Right.
So either my price has to go up or I got to figure something else out. And what you're alluding to in our space is the majority of what we get paid for comes from an insurance carrier who has a tendency to complain about everything you bill for. Like, it doesn't matter if it's $100,000 job. If I charge 10 for it, they're going to complain about the $10,000 that I charged for.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just where we live and where we operate. And I get it from their perspective, but you're right. I mean, we've got to be, and I really appreciate that perspective of being able to talk to these guys and go, look, it doesn't have to be somebody that's sitting in a desk. If they're going to be remote, they don't have to be somebody sitting in a desk in North Texas,
right,
or whatever city you're in. They can be wherever. So, if you want to employ somebody, if you want to employ a family member that needs a job that's going to be good at this, and they can't, they have to stay home for whatever reason, they can do this work from home. Maybe you can work out a deal with them, and they're in, Wyoming or Boston or whatever. It wouldn't make any difference. Or you can have, you can go close shore or offshore and still make the thing work. I mean, the reality is we all know that there's a lot of that happening, because that's why you get a lot of these spam robocalls, right? That are offshore people trying to call and tell you that they're in our case, we're based in Plano. And I'm like, no, you're not in Plano, right? Like, but the reality is it's just what it is in the market. And I do appreciate that, man. And I think that's
a lot of the industries have adopted that for a long time, right? I think trades and smaller businesses the technology, hasn't been there in order for us to be able to efficiently do that. But you and I are, even though we're both in North Texas, right? We're talking face to face here, on a computer. And so now that everybody has a computer, everyone has a webcam, but almost everyone has internet, it just has opened up those possibilities. Hopefully, being a free market believer, there'll be some efficiencies that are created, and some will come up hopefully with a new widget idea that'll continue to, create good, high paying jobs to backfill those ones that, technology comes up with a solution for.
Well, and that's a very big reality, right? Like, technology is going to solve a lot of the problems. There are ways to do more with less personnel as a result of what's happening with software solutions like what we're doing, or the AI tools that are coming out that are going to allow you to accomplish some other things. It's unique, and it's interesting to watch what's happening in that environment. So I'll be interested to see where all this leads when it's all said and done. So let me question, what do you think is, with the success you've had, what is the best decision you've made that's led to the most success?
Oh, man. Hard to narrow that down to one decision. I think what really propelled us, kind of going back to get to where he was, to where we are, is, man, when you're starting out, we said yes, and figured out, how to make it happen. So all the training stuff I said is important. Being ready, right? Like what is that? Luck is when opportunity meets skill or something like that, right? So you got to have that training, but man, you just got to be willing to say yes and be willing to go out and just, bust it for a few years in this business, right? I mean, it is what it is. And I still, keep that same attitude in place, looking for so I would say that. And then the biggest one was, probably 3 or 4 years ago, as we really started to, so you start to grow, right? I think this is kind of maybe a natural progression for a lot of businesses not just ours, right? But whatever, you start to grow and you need to say yes a lot on the front end. I would say, anything you can say yes to that how to do, or that's within your wheelhouse, you should say yes to, right? Even if it sucks, even if you're like, hey, this is going to be awful, I don't want to do this. You got to start building up your customer base. You got to start building your revenue. You got to be able to make your payroll. Once you start weeding down your customers, right? So we had our funnel and we were like way wide like this, right? So we started to say, okay, back to the numbers thing. How do we make, who are our best customers? So our funnel started getting a little bit narrower, right? It's like, hey, I don't have to say yes as often anymore because I know where I can make money. And I've this, Jane Doe customer or company or builder or commercial property or whoever, I know how that's going to go. I've been there and it's just not going to work for us. It might be right for Mr. Store, it might be a great option for this company, but for me, it's not. And that doesn't mean that I'm above it. It just means that there's some that are going to be not a great fit for you. You got to be smart. Figuring out where your fit is and then growing within that. I think the biggest thing we did was, so Clint knows, we do a lot in the multifamily space. I like that space. There's a lot of people who don't like it, but we figured out ways to be really good at it. And it's been great for our company. One of the property managers come up to us and said, hey, I saw your website and you list construction on your website. Like, yeah, we do construction. And we were doing it mostly in, residential space. Like, well, how come you never told me that? I'm like, well, because we leave and you have your own painters that do all your turnover and you have your flooring vendors that do all your turnover. And so you just turn it into them, right? They're like, yeah, but they don't really do repair work like this. They want to come in and do a quick paint or whatever. And so it was like, holy cow, you want us to do the repairs? And so, that opportunity was just sitting there before us by, not
walking away from it before, right?
Yeah.
And that brings up some conversation that I've had with some of our team, even on the Mr. Restore side, which is just observe.
Yeah.
Let's pay attention to what's going on around us and see if we can provide an extra level of customer service by just observing what is taking place. What do they like? What are they into? What do they really need? Do they need us to provide another service that we haven't asked about? We don't have to make it into a job just because we think we want a job, but can we do something extra to be exceptional at what we do by serving them? And it's great that you've recognized that. And now you go, okay, wait a minute. How do we tell people what we do without being pushy about it? Right.
Yeah. And finding out, and what else can you do within that account? I mean, yeah. So one of the hardest things for our business in the restoration business is having enough people, right? Because for Texas in particular, we're, September 22nd today. So we're 4 months away from probably our busiest time, consistently throughout the year. Into January, into February, we get freezes. We get, and that's when a lot of our mitigation work happens, outside of what I would call daily work, right? So you can never have enough people. I don't know anybody that can, but figuring out how to serve your customer base in ways that you can be good at it, that allows you to stay staffed up, I think is another key, to where you can take on more of those opportunities when they come in. You got to get creative, right? You have to find additional ways to hire labor and develop those relationships. But if you can keep 14 people staffed, let's just say throughout the year, because we've added these additional services and we're taking care of our clients, then that all of a sudden allows you to take care of even more of them, or a bigger base whenever, those busy times come in. And so I think of companies that have scaled way beyond anything that I have so far, if you look at a company like Cotton, right? They've got their catering business and they set up man camps, right? That allows them to keep an incredible amount of staff productive throughout the year. So when they have big, global disasters that come on, they've just got a huge labor force that they've built up and have access to, allow them to respond to stuff that, I know I can't, but other companies aren't going to get to as easily, because that was they were strategic and they're smart about that. So I think figuring out ways to add services with your customer base, so then whenever they really need you and more than one of them needs you at a time, you can scale up or be ready more quickly is important.
And I think that's beautiful. But beyond that, how hard is it to get a new client?
Very.
So if I've already got a client and there's more opportunity there that I can be profitable at. I don't need to work just to practice. Sure. I need to be able to be profitable at it. But if I've already got the client, then heck, man, let's try to take advantage of the fact that this is somebody that likes us and is captive. Let's do everything we can for them that's going to be profitable.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. 100%. Well, dude, I just looked at the time and it's 4:50. So we've been on this thing for almost an hour at this point, and I want to be mindful of your time. So I have plenty of questions. Maybe we circle back for a second one at some point. But before we wrap this one up, is there anything you want to say right now to someone that's looking to start a business or looking to go to that next level of business that we haven't mentioned yet? Knowing that we can still do another podcast sometime later, we'll circle back to the rest of the conversation.
Yeah. It's at the end of the day, all of these businesses it's about, the people, right? You got to take care of your customers and you got to take care of your people. And I think that getting really good at the stuff that, we talked about earlier of learning how to hire, learning how to put processes in place, and learning how to truly manage a business is the hardest thing you'll do. The technical side of the work is very important. And you have to learn that, but that's kind of like Patrick Lencioni has a word for it. I can't think of what it is right now, but like if you're going to start a restoration company and you're not going to learn how to do restoration, well, then that's a given. Like, you have to become a master at your trade. But what you really have to do to be a successful business owner is be a master at that trade, right? So hiring, managing, accountability, and knowing your numbers are just what you have to become a master at. If you choose not to be good at the trade that you're in, well, that's your own problem. You're going to go out of business. So I don't care if you learn the other stuff or not. But if you've decided to do something and you're going to be good at it, I'm going to assume that you're going to learn how to do it well. So focusing your time on, again, recruiting, culture, numbers, accountability are key. And the sooner you can do that and build that into your daily, rhythm and routine, the better off and the more successful you are, and you will scale much, much quicker than kind of the up and downs that you'll get by making those silly mistakes or decisions without the right information.
I think that's great, dude. And I appreciate it. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the friendship and the chance to chat with you on this one. Thanks for being on and stopping by and taking the time out of your day. And I think there's still a lot more we can chat about. That was a good conversation. It didn't seem like it was that long. So we may have to do another one too. I'm starting to really enjoy doing this with everybody, and like always going, hey, let's circle back for another one. So we're going to have a round 2 on all these with everybody that we're doing so far. They've been great. But man, I appreciate you. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks, Clint.
Bye, everybody. Talk soon.
This has been a Business Aspirin, Pain Relief for Business podcast. If you're a business owner trying to overcome your business pains, follow us on Apple Podcasts or visit our website for more information, job-docs.com.